You have not lived today until you have done something to help another person who can never repay you. At some point in our lives, we will do something to help another person. Or maybe we will do something like getting involved in community service or volunteering at a charity. And I'm sure that many of you have already done something like that. Ask yourselves, why did you get involved? Or why did you decide to help? Maybe it was because you wanted a new challenge in your life. Or maybe you thought, hey, I've got the skills. I know how to fix that problem. I can do it. Or maybe, and I'm guessing for some of you, your parents or your teachers told you that you had to do it and you didn't want to. Am I right? Maybe. I'm also willing to bet that the mission was very clear and you knew exactly what needed to be done. And so you went ahead and you did it. Now, would you be willing to help people if the mission wasn't clear and you didn't know exactly what needed to be done? Many charities and community service projects have a very clear goal in mind. Let's take, for example, a food bank. So a food bank is a really important resource for people who are struggling with the rising cost of living in today's world. A food bank's goal is very straightforward. They need donations of food, they need a place to store the food, and they also need volunteers to help organize everything and to distribute the food. And for those people who need this resource, they can go there and they can take what they need so they can feed their families. It's very clear, everyone can understand it, and almost anybody could get involved and help. Now think for a moment. Let's say this food bank were a kind of place where anybody could go with any sort of problem, and that the volunteers who were working there had no idea what to expect from the next person who walked through the door. What if you were one of these volunteers? Do you think you would be prepared enough to be able to give help, advice, and offer these people some direction? I lead a charity called Hackstrong, and this is exactly what we do. And it's a challenge that our team faces every single day. People will come to us with a diverse range of problems, and quite often, some of them are really unique. Hackstrong is a charitable organization based here in Taiwan, and we help people in the international community who are living and working here. And people come to us often with a diverse range of issues. Maybe that person has gotten into an accident and they're not sure what to do. Or maybe they are suffering a serious illness. Maybe they've also run into some legal trouble. We get asked a lot of legal questions. And also, some people are just finding it difficult living here in Taiwan. Maybe they're feeling lonely, they're suffering with culture shock, or maybe they've got depression and anxiety. And in some cases, we often have people contacting us, telling us that they are thinking about ending their lives. And so, Hackstrong is basically an organization that is here to listen. And we try our best to offer advice and direction to people. And our motto is, you are never, ever alone. So how did Hackstrong begin? And where did it come from? Well, in 2010, a really good friend of mine called Greg was living and working in the southern city of Kaohsiung in Taiwan. And he was an English teacher for a while. And later he became the manager of a really popular bar and restaurant there. And back then, back in 2010, Greg was, he was a really young, handsome guy, and he still is handsome, if you ask his friends. And he was into sports, all different kinds of sports. He was into motorcycles. He was a guitarist in a rock band. It's like really cool. And he was loved by everybody. He's the kind of person that when you meet him, he becomes instantly your friend. And Greg was also really good at his job. So much so that Greg was offered a really great opportunity to move to Taipei and to become the manager of a really popular bar and restaurant there. And so Greg naturally accepted. And then on September the 5th of 2010, Greg went out with his friends to celebrate this fantastic opportunity he'd been given. And very soon, he would be moving to Taipei to start a new and exciting life. And so Greg went out with his friends and partied all night. And at the end of the night, Greg made what could be described as the most terrible and life-altering decision anyone could make. He decided to ride his motorcycle home after drinking all evening. And yes, we all know that's not really a great thing to do. But at the time, Greg's friends, they all protested. They said, Greg, what are you doing? That's crazy. Don't do that. And they tried to take his keys from him. But Greg said, look, I'll be fine. It's okay. It's not that far to home. And so he got his keys and he got on his motorcycle and he left for home. But he never made it home. 2 months later, Greg woke up in hospital after being in a coma. And the first person that he saw was his mum and then his brother. And he had no idea why they were there or where he was or if he was even still in Taiwan. And he had a really hard time trying to understand what had happened to him. And this is what happened to him. So Greg was driving home that evening on his motorcycle, and he went through an intersection. And at the same time, a car came through, and they collided. Boom. Greg was rushed to hospital. And there, his friends ran to the hospital, and the doctors told his friends that he should probably think about saying goodbye to Greg because he was not going to make it through the next few hours. Because his injuries were so severe. And this is what Greg looked like not long after his accident. So Greg suffered, really a very terrible injuries to himself. But Greg actually made it through those critical hours and the next few days and weeks. And then 2 months later, he woke up from his coma. And he didn't know who he was. And he didn't know if he would ever be the same person again. And, when you're in this kind of position where you have this kind of injury to your brain, it plays all kinds of tricks on you. And you're not really sure what's reality and what isn't. And for Greg, he wasn't sure who he was. And his friends were telling him, hey, Greg, you were an English teacher and you were a bar manager and you were doing great and everything. And he's like, no, that's not what I am. He said, and this is true, I am a pilot in the Taiwanese Air Force. Sounds pretty crazy, right? And it was. And I remember at the time, Greg called me a couple of months after his accident. And he was telling me like he was this pilot in the Air Force. And I thought, what? It's crazy. But at the time, I knew that Greg had suffered this really terrible head injury. And I didn't want to upset him or make it worse. So I kind of just went along with it. And I was like, yeah, Greg, yeah, everything's fine. Like in the Air Force, we're flying planes and yeah, it's good. But yeah, that was that. So yeah, that all sounds so crazy and funny. And it was. But at the time, it was a really, really dark period for Greg in his life. And he didn't know if he would ever be the same he was again. And that's when Hackstrong began. So because Greg was in the hospital and his parents had flown here and, his brother, people all gathered together and they wanted to help. And so Hackstrong was formed as a way to help Greg through this time in his life. And Hackstrong, the name, is a combination of two things. First, Greg's family name, Haxton, and the word strong. So you've got Hackstrong. And it was a good symbol because Greg was seen as such a, a pillar, a strong pillar in the community. He was known by so many people. And also, against all odds, he survived this terrible thing that happened to him. And I'm happy to say, Greg went on and he has made a full recovery. And Greg felt that Hackstrong shouldn't just be an organization which helps him. His mission in life now was to go forward and to help other people who are suffering through similar kinds of situations. Now, Greg, during his accident, he also lost one of his eyes. And although he lost an eye, Greg still maintains that he may have lost an eye, but he gained a greater vision for what his life would be going forward. And since then, Greg has helped many, many people in Taiwan with his team. And he's also inspired many others to get involved, myself included. And Greg's actually here in the audience today, and I wanted to get him to stand up and give a wave to everybody. Greg, and they say hi to everybody and give him a clap. I'm sorry, I can't clap. I got two things in my hand. We're going to have a problem. Okay, so yeah, Greg's story has definitely been an inspiration to many people, including me. But for me, I didn't get involved in Hackstrong until about 2016. And I'd known Greg for a long time. We'd been friends for a long time. And the reason I got involved was I was living here in Taichung at the time, and there was some news spreading through social media about a guy in our community who was walking home one day from work, and he was hit by a car. And he was in a really critical condition in hospital. And I heard about this, and I contacted Greg, and I said, Greg, do you think there's anything that Hackstrong could do to help? And he said, yeah, I'm sure there is. But he said, Shaun, I've got a problem. I don't have anyone in Taichung who can help. He said, could you maybe find out some more information for me? So I said, yeah, sure. And 2 days later, I was at the hospital meeting the family of this guy who had been hit by a car and was in critical condition. And I didn't have any experience like Greg did in helping people in this way. But somehow when I was there, it felt kind of natural to me. And I knew exactly what was needed. And I think myself, I've done a lot of different things in my life, different jobs, careers, been involved in different projects. And all those things, I guess, led me to being in the right place at the right time to help. So what makes me particularly suited for working in Hackstrong and dealing with these diverse range of issues that we face? Well, I've, like Greg, before I was an English teacher, and I was also a supervisor, and I was a trainer for new teachers coming into Taiwan. So my job was to work with these new people coming into Taiwan, teaching, training them, encouraging, supporting, and helping them with any problems that they might face in their daily life. And I think that gave me a really good grounding for what people go through when they first get here. And also, from a young age, my mom always taught me to treat others with respect in the same way that I would wish to be treated. And I think that also forms a big part of the empathy that I have for other people when they're facing a difficult situation. And from being very young, my family lived all over the world in lots of different countries because of my father's job. And so we got to experience life as a foreign resident in these countries. And so I've always been very kind of internationally minded. And naturally, I've got friends from all over the world. And I feel like I can get on with people from all walks of life and different backgrounds. And that's definitely important in the work that I do at Hackstrong, because our international community here is so diverse. And, if I were to think about all the different things that I've done, for a while,
I moved out of teaching, and I've also worked in lots of different companies here. I've done sales and marketing, I've done branding, I've done copywriting. And for a while, I even ran my own small business. And it was just me. And when you run your own small business and it's just you have to do everything. Like, you got a problem, you need to sort it out yourself. So I think that gave me a lot of experience and skills that I can bring to this organization and help others. And, you know, I've lived in Taiwan now for most of my adult life, almost 20 years. And with all these different experiences, I have one particular experience, I think, that really stands out for me that I did. And in 2012, I had this sort of crazy idea. I was like, I wanted to do this thing. It's a really long story, but trying to bring it short. I started this project. It was called I Love Taiwan. And so I put this idea out on the internet, and then it went crazy. It went viral. It was on the television. It was everywhere. And what happened is, at the end of this project, on October the 10th, with the help of the Taichung city government, we got 2,000 people together, and we broke a Guinness World Record outside of the city hall. And what this experience taught me was that, you know, if you have an idea and you want to do something, that I can have the confidence to do it. If I see a problem, I know that I can give it a go and I can fix it. And I don't think anything can stop me from doing that. I also consider myself to be quite sort of multi-skilled, almost like a Swiss Army knife. And, you know, a Swiss Army knife is a tool, and it has lots of different tools for lots of different applications. So I think, like, today, I'm a knife. Tomorrow, a screwdriver. And then the next day, I'm a spoon. You know, it could be any kind of different thing that's needed for different applications. And it's a question that people always ask me about skills, because I've lived in Taiwan so long. They always ask me, you know, Shaun, you've lived here for 20 years. How's your Chinese? Must be good, right? So I like to humbly answer, it's excellent. Thank you. So, despite all these skills and experiences that I've had in my life, I never thought that I would end up being an advocate for the international community in Taiwan. But it turns out that wanting to help was enough. Greg told me once, he said, Shaun, Hackstrong is you. I said, what do you mean? I said, Hackstrong's you, man. He said, no, this organization, Hackstrong, is whatever you, I, or anyone else brings to it. And what we are trying to do is to help people in our community and give them hope in their darkest moments. People can often see gaps in services, or they see a need that needs to be filled. And they think, I'm not the right person to do that. Or, yes, someone else should do that, but I can't, I don't have the skills. But that's the thing about problems, though, isn't it? Nobody has all of the skills and all of the knowledge to be able to fix any given problem at any given time. Noticing that problems exist is where it starts. That's the first step. Noticing was the catalyst for the birth and the expansion of Hackstrong. And I implore all of you, if you see a need to be filled, step up and help. I want you to take a moment and think about, when was the last time that you helped somebody that was in need? But most importantly, think about how and why you were able to help. As the famous poet Robert Frost wrote, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one that was less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you.